Hello, my dear friends. I'm Father Diego, and today, Wednesday, February the 19th. Yes, the 19th. We listen from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verses 22 to 26. When Jesus and his disciples arrived at Bethsaida, they brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. Putting spittle on his eyes, he laid his hands on him and asked, "Do you see anything?" Looking up, he replied, "I see people looking like trees and walking." Then he laid hands on his eyes a second time, and he saw clearly. His sight was restored, and he could see everything distinctly. Then he sent him home and said, "Do not even go into the village." Keep in mind that one of the goals of the Gospel of Mark is to reveal the nature of Jesus Christ and his identity as Messiah, right? We have seen so far Jesus' wondrous deeds as signs of the presence of the kingdom of God among us. But also we have seen the difficult to understand, the incapacity better to understand the message of the gospel and to understand Jesus by the Pharisees and sometimes even by the disciples, right? So the restoring of the sight of this blind man must be read and understood as a restoration of the spiritual sight, right? Which is the capacity to see Jesus in his fullness and to understand his message and to understand the message of the kingdom of God, the proclamation, the very proclamation of this gospel. In doing so, we can embrace and welcome Jesus as whole, in his fullness, not to isolate the mystery of the cross and of the suffering of Jesus, because that's the risk that we Christians face every time, to kind of clean up the message of the gospel and just to take the best part of this message and to believe in a triumphant Christ and nothing to do with human suffering, not fair with the message of the gospel. I know that sometimes it's hard to understand what's going on in our lives, especially when we are going through difficult times, as we claim to God, why me, right? And it's hard to bring light to those moments of darkness. But as I said before, and I think as I'm going to say over and over while we read the Gospel of Mark, we have to stick with Jesus until the very end to understand, first of all, his role as Messiah, but also his suffering, the suffering of his cross as part of this plan of redemption, this plan of salvation that brings light to our whole life. Not only this triumphant and happy proclamation, but also to all those moments in which we experience suffering, in which we experience darkness and isolation and pain, right? So may the Lord, as he has done with this guy, restore our sight, restore the capacity to open our eyes and to see him in its fullness and to embrace him with all our hearts. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Jesus is my rock. That's how I roll. That's how I roll. Yes. Cup of coffee. And I'll see you tomorrow with the message of the gospel. Cheers. Ciao, ciao.